Yeah, thank you all. I'm glad you're all here. You know, it's as probably most of you know, the application of drones is very, very broad, from agriculture to construction to public safety. It touches so many different verticals in the application of that technology that I think it's important that people understand what those technologies can do, the applications of them, and perhaps as importantly, the convergence of various technologies on a drone platform. So the first person I would like to introduce is Biren Gandhi. Biren brings a wealth of experience with drones and with technologies across the board. So I'd like to ask Biren to talk about that convergence in drones and the technologies as it applies, the vast technologies that are applied and carried on a drone platform. So Biren, if you want to enlighten us with your vast knowledge, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Biren.
Thank you. I'm actually here to get enlightened myself, because it's the sharing of minds and ideas that make us all great. That's the collaborative spirit, because events like this, that's what they facilitate. They make everybody grow together. And that's what we are going to do. We are going to touch upon some of the things that I've done in the past, things that I've been doing recently, and in the long-term vision-wise that we all can benefit from. So a little bit about my background, as Bruce mentioned, like I used to be Cisco's distinguished strategist, focusing on the outbound ideas, all the disruptive technologies. I was leading the drone program for a couple of years. In addition to the drone program, we were engaged in artificial intelligence, blockchain, robotics, IoT, Internet of Things, fog computing, and a bunch of other things. So all the cool areas and technologies you can pretty much think of. We were trying to incubate new ideas, new technologies, new startups, and systems around those areas. More recently, I've been focusing on building my own startup on the intelligent voice-based systems. We see a lot of traction based on Alexa and Google Assistant and a bunch of other systems. In the past, we had done successful demos of voice-controlled drones. Basically, you can manage instead of joysticks and all. We had done some demos on voice-controlled drones. So basically, that was the genesis of the whole idea about this voice-controlled IoT devices in general. But as part of today's session, what we're going to do is we are going to focus a little bit higher up on where the whole the technology landscape is moving, where we are going together. So I think if we show the presentation there, it would be nice. So it's more of a recent discovery by Australian astronomers. Anybody know what that is? It's an interesting thing. It's a supermassive black hole which is swallowing up the mass of our sun every 48 hours. So basically, it's eating our sun every 48 hours, and it has been doing it for billions of years, and it's gaining momentum in size. The idea behind that is everything is perishable. All the largest object we can think of, even those are perishable, and so is the technology. Whatever disruptive technology it might appear today, it may no longer be disruptive tomorrow. We need to think in this broader perspective. However, the impact that that technology can provide can be a long-lasting thing, and that's where we all can positively contribute to. So even though the technology itself is going to be vanished in a few years or a few hundred years, but we as human beings, we can definitely contribute something meaningful to the growth, to the legacy, to the heritage that we all live upon. And we can definitely utilize technology in order to achieve that broader overarching goal. Anybody remember those things? I think we have significant gray-haired people like me in the audience. We can still relate to those audio cassettes and VHS tapes and those punch cards and the floppy disks and even the CDs and DVD drives, or even the old calculators. Not just the calculators, but even the general purpose computer, the ENIAC in 1946. So it was so powerful, it was top of the line back in the days. It occupied 1,800 square feet, weighed 30 tons, and took $5.5 million in 1946 to build it, and it had awesome 5,000 operations per second. Now compare that to today's ordinary greeting card, which you can buy at supermarkets and grocery stores for a few dollars. Look at the specs. It's 800 times faster than ENIAC, 1.1 million times less expensive, and 1.7 million times smaller in footprint. So that is what technology has brought us, how far. And just another thing is, like, if we had to build ENIAC using that old days technologies, with the power of today's greeting card, instead of $5.5 million, it would require $4.4 billion, all of our money, taxpayers' money, to build that system. So just look at how far technology has progressed. This is another example, like Google's AlphaGo system, which is beating every single human champion on the earth at the game of Go. The interesting fact about, like, the original AlphaGo system has evolved so much. They have been onto this AlphaGo Zero system now. So that system learns itself with zero prior human knowledge about how to play a game. And they are claiming that it can be generalized to any game. So this is like a classic application of artificial intelligence. And within 3 days, this Zero game was able to achieve the level of maturity and expertise that was beating the world champion Lee Sedol on this AlphaGo original system. And after 40 days, it is achieving the maximum level of maturity and expertise, can theoretically beat any system or any human being at the game of the Go. So what does this tell us? Using all this AI and disruptive technologies, are we basically accelerating ourselves to singularity? The point where the machine intelligence surpasses the human intelligence. Typically they say human intelligence rises and grows linearly versus machine intelligence grows exponentially. So there is a cutover point, and that's where we are. Are we accelerating to that point? Well, I don't know, but the digital disruption that the technologies are providing, that is very real today. And we are seeing the nitty-gritty effects of those things. Just one example. Like in 10 years, it's predicted that 40% of these Fortune 500 multi-billion-dollar corporations, mega corporations, 40% of them, so 200 out of 500, they are going to be non-existent just in 10 years time frame. And it's not out of the blue. There is an anecdotal proof as well. Between 1995 and 2014, like 19 years time frame, how many of the S&P 500, Fortune 500 companies were existing? The companies that were still on that index in 1995 and on 2014, how many do we think were there? Only 12% of the companies, 61 companies out of 500 were still surviving in just 20 years time window. So the disruption is very, very real, and we are seeing the deaths of these mega corporations every single day in our lifespans. In fact, the average lifespan of an S&P 500 company used to be 67 years in 1920s, and it has reduced merely 15 years. So company gets on to S&P 500 on average. Within 15 years, a company is out of S&P 500. And these are like multi-billion-dollar mega corporations. Companies don't end up on S&P 500 that easily. It's not a startup, fly-by-night, overnight startup. So the pace of change, the disruptions, the new business models, as we all know, in various spaces like taxi to hotel industry to retail stores to digital geographies, the finance and asset sharing and everything as a service, it's drastically and rapidly changing. The only thing real is it's the speed of innovation is really accelerating. Ideas are coming from anywhere in the world. The cost of experimentation is very, very low. So the competitive landscape is very high. So the only thing which is real is either you disrupt yourself or be disrupted by somebody else. So it's a struggle for existence, struggle for survival. It's not struggle for growth or promotions. In fact, our own drone industry that has been suffering, this was like just 2 days back news article. Previously, what job used to earn $2,000, it's now earning only $175 in less than 2 years time frame. Right? So it's like 90% commoditization happening. So it's a global competitive race. Various tools, various automation technologies, they are actually grabbing these opportunities from people. And there are many other disruptive technologies with a buzz. And we can add a few more like artificial intelligence and blockchain and IoT and robotic process automation. Like there may be many, many buzzwords, they will come and go. But I think what we need to think in general as Focus, instead of technology, focus on problem solving, the people part, like how a particular piece of technology helps solve people's problem in day-to-day life. Only those technologies are going to become the norm and the survival stories. In fact, these drone use cases, we can come up with like many various drone use cases, like many different varieties, different verticals. Every single one, yes, it helps humanity, it helps people's lives getting better, either from safety, security perspective, or getting the footage, catching bad apples, protecting your territories, like you name it, like many different things, or even the digital measurements and all. The whole digitization paradigm is possible in certain areas because of drones and other automation. But who really cares? If you look at it in the enterprise space, the real transformation drivers are fundamentally three things: monetization, productivity, or user experience or stakeholder experience. So either it has to affect the top line, the profit, the margins and revenues and all that. It has to affect the bottom line, or it has to affect the customer engagement. If a technology is not affecting any of these three factors, it's very difficult for that technology to survive. However, there is a fourth dimension that I'd like to bring out today, and that is, it's how are we helping the humanity in general, because that surpasses all the short-term objectives and benefits. Because if we look at it, the human mind has like typically two parts, and Yuval Harari is claiming this very nicely, articulating very nicely in his book, is like initially there are physical part and there's a cognitive part. So initially machines took over physical jobs, all the blue-collar jobs from humans. Machines became more and more efficient at doing those mundane jobs like day in and day out very, very efficiently, because they did not have their brain of their own, obviously. But now the same machines are competing for the cognitive side of the jobs. So they are, with artificial intelligence and other technologies, they are competing with that human intellect as well. And it's a constant battle, it's an ongoing battle between the hand-based skills, and from the hand to head-based skills, the white-collar jobs, and then in the future there are going to be emotional skills, the heart-based skills, more creativity, more human touch. And that's where humans will have to evolve. But when the history of this whole drone technology or the disruptions and all, when it will be written, only one question will decide its success. And that question is, how did we help the humanity thrive? Everything else is really not going to matter in the long run, just like that swallowing of our sun every 48 hours. In the real long-term effect-wise, how are we helping the fellow human beings on the face of this earth? Only that thing is going to count. So can we write this colorful future together, globally? Let's try that. Thank you.
Thank you, Biren. I think that certainly provides a general overview of the possibilities that exist with technologies, and particularly with respect to drones. And the truth of the matter is that all of these technologies really are about how do we help humanity, how do we help one another, how do we help our governments work better, how do we better service humankind. And all of us at one level or another are engaged in that. Are there any questions at the moment from folks in the audience? Yes, sir.
On the drones, can you address the battery life on the drones? And also, everybody saw this when they watched the Olympics, when they had a swarm of drones. Is that something, having more than one drone up at a time, kind of coordinating that effort?
Yes. So the first question was battery life. There's two limiting factors when it comes to drones, and one is the human, the operator, and the other one is battery, the power, especially on multi-rotors. On fixed wings, it's a little bit different. You have a different type of lift capabilities there due to the wing. But on multi-rotors, battery life is certainly much lower. Now, with Tesla, for example, and their development, I foresee that we will see larger battery capacities in the not too distant future. I address this issue right now as something positive, because if you're a firefighter, if you're a search and rescue or a law enforcement officer, After 25 minutes or 35 minutes of flight time, and you have to bring your machine down for a battery exchange, those 2 minutes they're a great break for you. So it kind of is a positive thing, even though it's not. And the question in regards to swarming of drone swarms, I think it's a fascinating topic because you could do so much more. Imagine if you're out in a search and rescue operation, and instead of having 1 or 2 drones, you have 20 drones that all communicate with each other. Maybe one drone is the lead drone that spots something, and the other drones go and get a confirmation if it's a false positive, or maybe they divide the area. I mean, there's so much potential. But then on the flip side, you could also do some additional damage. So it's this balance of where do we want to go with the technology, what are the possibilities, and how can we mitigate some of the risk?
Any other questions?
From a training and development perspective, how long does it take for you to get in the fire environment? How long does it take to get a drone operator trained and ready to deploy a drone in a real life situation?
And actually, I'd say Romeo or Chief Holden would maybe speak better than that. And let me qualify it with, I think getting someone to be able to operate it is reasonably short. To do it appropriately and set public awareness and policies and procedures and legal FAA requirements and all of that, I'll give that to Romeo. But on the discussion on swarming, I did want to say one of the advantages there, besides just being able to collect more data from various angles, is the Internet of Things discussion and mesh networks. And a lot of times we're working in a very remote area and we don't have cell reception. But if one drone had cell reception and could pass it on, or connectivity for Wi-Fi or something that could be valuable, you want to speak to the time to launch a program? And I'd say grit and commitment is dependent on the time.
Yeah, it's a great question. There are multiple thoughts. First of all, there is right now no national training standard. And I think the development of such a standard will dramatically increase how fast and how well firefighters or search and rescue or law enforcement officers are being trained on the use of UAVs. But I think the biggest challenge is at a city level, where you have your city attorney's office that has concerns, and where you have your city council and your mayor's office that have concerns about the technology and the impact, because we are not doing good enough education on the topic. Reality is the drone is just a data gathering device, just like a helicopter with a flare camera and a high zoom capable camera is. There's no difference, except it's much simpler to deploy, less cost, and so we have to get away from this thinking that the drone is here to spy, to look at us. It's here to provide helpful data. So a department can go through the process from several months to a couple years. I know of departments that are still struggling after 2 years of trying to convince their city management to support the program. But I know departments that have done it in 6 months and are very operational and use it several times a week.
Yes, sir.
Bruce, can I add just 2 cents from the prior experience? Just hold on that. To the thought of the mesh networking, we had done some exercise almost 2 years back at the Guardian Center in Atlanta on the mesh drone network, and we had trained like a bunch of fire departments across the country and the FEMA operations manager as well. But as you said correctly, right, it's the technology part may be the simplest in the equation, the food chain. It's the non-technology part, the operations, the human aspects, the management, the convincing, the processes. Those aspects actually take much longer time in operationalizing any disruptive technology-based solutions. So technologies, even though it's complex, is fairly easy to understand. So even in those areas, and I was so convinced personally, like I have a patent also on that area, that mesh connectivity of drones, and one drone acting as a relay. But what the learning for us in those exercises is automation at all levels, because it's a very tensed scenario. So whatever you can offload from human brain, that should be the priority. Make human time extremely crucial and make them spend in that important, critical, life-saving decisions instead of how to operate a piece of equipment, right? I mean, that's the natural give and take of those tense scenarios. So more and more automation, like one push button and the single drone or swarm of drones or whatever that is, they go up, intercommunicate with themselves and save lives. So focusing on those life-saving part is more crucial. But that's where it takes more operational time and energy in convincing people and divisions, organizations, and everybody.
Thank you, Biren. Well, folks, we've got to wrap this up. Our time has elapsed, and of course, we have a plethora of knowledge up here. Please feel free to speak with any of these fine people about any questions you may have, and thank you again. And I certainly hope personally that we begin to carry this forward and get our local agencies and regional and state agencies to begin to adopt a technology that is really empirically provable that we can save lives, save money, and save time. Thank you very, very much. It's greatly appreciated.